Halsey, Ashley Hunt, Kelsey Walla, Haley Ophiella, and Brianna Tully. Our modern world is facing many challenges. Farmers are trying to feed the world, but farmland is dwindling.
Ways to feed the world and its growing population need to be found. Our population is expected to increase to 9.7 billion people by 2050. So food production must increase by 70% to meet this demand.
In our East Central ISD community, over 65% of our community is economically disadvantaged and qualifies for free or reduced lunch. The city of San Antonio is constantly having food drives to feed its hungry.
Can a community be taught to feed itself?
Can farmers keep up with this population growth with the number of farmers dwindling?
Can farmers feed the world without harsh chemicals and pesticides?
Modern technology is continually looking for ways to increase food production. One solution growing in popularity is vertical farming.
The idea of vertical farming is based on one simple principle. Instead of trucking food from farms into cities, the food will be grown as close to home as possible in urban greenhouses that stretch upward.
Dixon DePaumier, a microbiology professor at Columbia University, developed the idea of vertical farming that uses stacked structures to increase production in a small area.
DePaumier's first design in 2001 was of a vertical farm, 30 stories high, occupying the size of a Manhattan block. His idea was to provide food right in the heart of the city.
He felt that there was a great need for inner city blocks to have their own immediate source of food, where plants be grown without soil by means of aeroponics and hydroponics within buildings already known as farm scrapers.
In the U.S., vertical farms are sprouting in urban areas across the country, some in old buildings that have been repurposed for agriculture. One operation, called The Plant, is producing vegetables in a 3-story former meatpacking facility on Chicago's South Side.
Another example in our research projected that 100 different fruit and vegetable crops could be grown in the upper stories, while the lower floors could be dedicated to developing meat animals such as fish or chicken, which would benefit from the plant waste of the upper floors.
Vertical farming has become a very real option to help grow the food needed to support the growing population.
But is it what it appears? Is it a solution to our world hunger problem? Our goal today is to look at the benefits and risks of using vertical farming in our community. On our pro side will be Garrett, Joanna, and I, while Kelsey, Haley, and Brianna speak on the con side.
The pro side will be arguing 3 points. 1. Vertical farming is a viable solution in the world hunger issue. 2. Vertical farming has less of an environmental impact than traditional methods. 3. Vertical farming is an efficient method of food production that can be used year-round.
Vertical farming may be the only solution to keeping up with the feeding of our world's growing population. With the population increasing at such a rapid rate of 1.13%, combined with the fact that urban populations are increasing, new ways of food production must be found.
With the overpopulation of the world ever increasing, and water and land being a finite source, alternative options are being sought for feeding the masses, yet minimizing land use. How are we going to continue to house and feed everyone?
If we need more land for housing, then the farmlands and forests will shrink. And yet one needs the farmland and forest to feed the masses and to produce oxygen to sustain other life forms.
With high-rise farming, a relatively large area of land could be converted into a facility on which a multi-story building would be constructed. It would be purposely located in urban centers. Important food crops will be grown in this building, and soilless medias, implying mainly the techniques of hydroponics.
Now there is better technology and materials that can be used to create vertical farming like the world has never seen before, producing 100 times the amount of food that is produced now. More than enough food to feed the world's 7 billion people.
The USDA reports that food poverty in cities is already becoming an increasingly urgent issue, with food deserts documented where the urban poor can neither find nor afford fresh food, causing crises where entire communities suffer dramatically with reduced health and life expectancies.
With 5-stack levels of crops per floor, that's 50 times the amount of food production per acre of land. Being able to produce 50% of this amount of food per acre could pay for the initial expense of the building and allow for a quicker return on the investment.
Our second pro point is that vertical farming has less of an environmental impact than traditional methods. Farming indoors can reduce the use of pesticides and herbicides, which pollute the environment and agricultural runoff. Since pests and weather aren't an issue, it's easy to avoid using pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers.
Vertical farming reduces the need for transportation, since it's grown right in the location of the consumers. According to Bembereha of Crops Review, there is a significant reduction in air pollution, which leads to climate change, because vertical farming eliminates the use of mechanical plows and equipment, thus leading to an overall reduction in fossil fuel usage.
Plants grown in high-rise buildings erected on now vacant city lots and in large multi-story rooftop greenhouses could produce food year-round using significantly less water, producing little waste and less risk of infectious diseases.
And the more food that is produced indoors, the less susceptible they become to environmental crises that disrupt crops and send prices skyrocketing, like the devastated U.S. corn crops the past few years.
Our final pro point is that vertical farming is an efficient method of food production that can be used year-round to produce food in our communities.
In fact, 98% less water is used per item of produce compared to traditional farms. This hydroponics is an important method of vertical farming. It also leads to no agricultural runoff because all wastewater is converted into usable water through evapotranspiration.
Barry Holt, the CEO of Caliber Biotherapeutics in Bryan, Texas, says his facility is efficient when it comes to water and electricity. He states that they have done calculations and lose less water in one day than a KFC restaurant uses because all water is recycled.
In vertical farming, food can be grown year-round. An example of this is the Vertical Harvest Farm in Jackson, Wyoming, which uses natural and artificial light to produce food in a location that is usually blanketed in snow most of the year.
There are no crop failures due to drought, floods, or pests since plants are grown under controlled conditions in enclosed facilities. Vertical farming can be used in a variety of climates, including deserts or areas where water is limited, like parched areas in California, which is currently under a major drought.
In summary, vertical farming can be a way to solve the world's hunger problem by growing food right in the community, which lowers the environmental food production. Vertical farming can be a way to solve the world hunger problem by growing food right in the community, which lowers the environmental impact of food production. And finally, it is efficient method food production that can be used year-round.
We believe that vertical farming is not all that the pro side says it is. We will center our discussion around 3 con points. 1, the cost outweighs the benefits. 2, it is not an efficient use of energy. And 3, vertical farming has numerous limitations. Our pro partners have shared with us the benefits, but we see vertical farming as cost extensive, since setting it up takes a lot of time and money. In fact, it's much more expensive, of course, to build a vertical greenhouse than a normal greenhouse, says Hans Hassel, Plantagon's chief executive. If one was to build a vertical farm from the ground up, it would be very expensive. The Jackson, Wyoming facility, mentioned by the pros, cost $3.7 million to construct. Does that sound like a cheap greenhouse? Not to me. One premise of vertical farming is that abandoned buildings in a city could be used. These buildings were not originally designed to house crops, but to house people. Repurposing pre-existing buildings is an option, but the problem of converting them leads to costly problems, like lighting the interior, so the plants near the center of the building get enough light. The cost benefits that were received by the decrease in transportation expenses may be canceled out by the extra cost of lighting, heating, and powering needed to run vertical farms. Another potential cost is the land, which is usually in prime real estate locations. There is a reason we don't farm intensively in urban areas. The land is too expensive, with costs that rise even higher building towering structures, says Matthew LaPond of New Geography. An example of a projection to build a vertical farm goes like this. According to Building Green and data from RS Means, the cost of an office building over 10 stories in New York City is only $200 per square foot in construction costs alone. That means if this were just an office building consisting of 10 stories, the price range could be over $1.3 billion. Taking into account the advanced systems that would need to be included in this building designed to accommodate plant and animal life, as well as the renewable energy, as Kelsey mentioned, the cost might be an additional $100 per square foot, totaling in excess of $1.9 billion. Does that sound cost effective? Our second con point is that vertical farming is not practical due to its poor energy efficiency. According to Stan Cox and David Van Tassel, and authors in Vertical Farming Doesn't Stack Up, controlling the climate to achieve suitable growing conditions would have huge energy requirements. The artificial light being used would release more energy as heat than as light, which would put a huge load on air conditioning systems during the summer. They go on to say that to maintain the good health of plants grown indoors, humidity and air circulation must be very precisely controlled, often at a high energy cost. But before any of those needs will come the gargantuan resource requirements for constructions of the towers themselves.
Cox and Tassel say wheat production with vertical farming would require 8 times as much electricity as all U.S. utilities generate in an entire year. They also looked at corn production energy calculations for vertical farming, which would result in a lighting requirement that would reach 40 times the current U.S. electricity supply.
A facility currently operating in Great Britain that produces 15% of the British salad crop requires its own mini power station to provide its plants with light 15 hours a day during the winter months. This rather undermines the notion that vertical farming will save energy and cut carbon emissions, notes Peter Head, global leader of planning and sustainable development in a British engineering firm. Vertical farming will need cheap, renewable energy if it is to work, he says.
Our final point is that vertical farming has numerous limitations that would make it unfeasible.
According to the vertical harvest of Jackson Hole, many are concerned with the variety of plants grown in a vertical farm system. The types of vegetables that are able to grow in a greenhouse is limited when compared to traditional farming. If the greenhouse is insect-free, pollination will have to be done by hand, which would be an added energy cost.
Even with the all-glass walls, the amount of light reaching plants on all but the top story of a high-rise would fall far short of what is needed. A significant portion of the light hitting the building would be turned back by the glass, and direct sunlight would penetrate into the interior of a vertical farm only when the sun is low in the sky.
We still need to provide approximately 50 kilowatt hours per square foot of supplemental light in the growing area of our greenhouse to achieve the high plant productivity that we already meet. This means in a vertical greenhouse, it would be necessary to provide perhaps another 100 kilowatt hours per square foot in a year, which would be very costly and require a lot of energy.
According to D.S. DeBoer, in the pros and cons of vertical farming, growing food is only part of the equation. Since only a portion of what we eat isn't processed, we would have to move the food processing facilities to the production areas. Also, recycling waste products and water from processing plants would give us more pollution issues to deal with.
Total space needed to produce the crops is also a concern. In fact, vegetables, not counting potatoes, occupy only 1.6% of our total cultivated land. At equivalent yield per acre, vertical farming will need the floor space of 105,000 Empire State Buildings, and that would still leave more than 98% of our crop production still out in the fields.
Besides the worries of energy costs of inputs, light, water, nutrients, Marion Nessel, a professor of nutrients at New York University and the author of Food Politics and What to Eat, is worried about the nutrients in soil that aren't reproduced in artificial systems. She is also worried about the taste issues since soil influences taste.
In summary, our core argument against it. Conventional farms are the simplest and most efficient places to produce food. Growing food indoors using artificial lights and other special equipment means more effort and expense and cancels out any benefits of being close to customers. As we conclude today, each side will offer their final statements and the pros and cons of vertical farming. We will begin with the pro side.
Can vertical farming solve the world hunger problem? We believe it can, because with the amount of arable land available, there's no way we can feed the masses with traditional farming. But by using vertical farming, we can grow enough food for everyone in a smaller space.
Vertical farming has a little environmental impact with the reduction of pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. Vertical farming also reduces the burning of fossil fuels, which pollutes the environment.
Traditional horizontal farming is continually subjected to factors beyond the control of farmers, like natural disasters or simply the seasons. Vertical farming negates this, creating pathways for consumers to have a continuous and accessible food source year-round.
Now our con side will summarize their point. Although vertical farming can produce mass quantities of food, the cost of repurposing or constructing buildings to do this is very expensive. The equipment can cost millions of dollars, which defeats the purpose of vertical farming, saving money.
Vertical farms have huge energy requirements, including climate control, lighting conditions, and mass amounts of technology needed to build and operate. requirements that cannot be met.
When compared to traditional farming, vertical farms cannot compete with the diversity of crops produced.
Everything we have in this world started out crazy. Dr. DePalmier said this when he began developing and defending vertical farming. To him, vertical farming was a means to an end. With this idea, we could end the world hunger issue.
But is vertical farming even plausible? In theory, it may seem so. But does its plausibility hold up in terms of reality? Is vertical farming the solution?
For now, only the future will tell. Thank you for your time. We are now ready for questioning.
The vertical farms that exist today, are they natural and organic all the way, or is there inhibitors such as fertilizers used?
Right now, we don't see any that are considered using the fertilizers you talk about. But as for truly organic, if you talk about the GMO side, the one we talk about, Caliber Biotherapeutics, they're actually a pharmaceutical company that grows the plants using GMOs to get the specific genes they need in the plants. So technically, it's not completely organic, but the ones in theory and the ones that are popping up around the world are completely organic.
Do we have any here in our country?
Yes.
Chicago.
There is one in
Chicago, Wyoming, Bryan, Texas.
Would vertical farms make more sense in someplace like San Antonio or someplace like New York?
New York, since it's more urbanized. In San Antonio, we're still more relying on agricultural more, since we are surrounded by more country, rural people, and New York is basically city and urban.
And also to add on to that, New York has an air pollution issue. These greenhouses have the potential of increasing the oxygen rate, which could help clean the air in New York.
Will you all be competing against other teams? This is a wonderful presentation. Thank you and good luck. I think you'll go all the way.
Yeah, y'all are great.